Welcome back to Heartland Mamas.
I'm Heidi Henry, and I'm in your face.
And I'm Marie Briel, trying to figure out the human race.
Marie, today we're going to talk about the Emoluments Clause.
I'd like to start by saying... She took the words right out of my mouth.
I'm so sorry.
It is real. The Emoluments Clause was designed to protect people in power from corruption and outside influence, so that those people in power could make decisions that were best for the nation without self-interest. Essentially, that's the philosophy behind the clause. But Heidi's going to give you the actual wording so we know it's real. We'll put a link to it, pictures. I don't know if we have to carbon date it or whatever. But to prove that it is real, it's not phony. Oh, my
Well, the Emoluments Clause made its first appearance in the Federalist Papers, which predated even our Constitution. And like Marie said, it was to keep our... federal employees, especially the top employee, our president, from being influenced by foreign powers. Okay.
And domestic. Well, yes, foreign. Yeah. That was foreign.
Foreign and domestic, but mostly foreign.
And
it's the Emoluments Clause provides a salary to the president of right now $400,000 a year. That's a salary clause of that clause, and the president isn't allowed by law, by the Constitution, to take other income at that time, so that he stays true to his job and true to the people. So
he doesn't have interest, which is why we just did an episode on Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, which is why he divested himself of all of his
peanut farm. Yeah. So to make sure that there's no hint of wrongdoing,
impropriety, undue influence, no greed.
Yes. So the clause prevents federal officials from being compensated by foreign governments. And that's why recently we had an issue with his Trump's Doral property outside of Miami. And the issue with that is that he would have profited from holding the G7 summit there. And that's why it was wrong for him to offer it, suggest it, do an infomercial to our allies for it. It was wrong. And it shouldn't have, it shouldn't have even been considered.
No, absolutely
It should not. I mean, of all places, any of his property should never have even crossed his lips if he was interested in being true to our Constitution. And, the thing with Doral being problematic is since Trump took office, since he started running for president, the income there has dropped 67%. So I understand why he wants to promote it, because he doesn't want his property to tank. He's had problems with his property in Scotland being down in revenue. In Ireland being down in revenue.
Maybe because everyone hates him and doesn't want to spend their money.
Well, that's exactly the problem. Is he's not well liked in this country or in the world, and his supporters by and large can't afford to go to Doral or Mar-a-Lago or any of the other properties that he has. So, and the wealthy people are just staying away in droves. They don't want to be there either. So, Murray, when we talk about the Emoluments Clause, I was reading today that there could be as many as 2,500 incidences of impropriety by the Trump administration surrounding the Emoluments Clause. Now, we all sat there as he was getting ready to take office and saw him on TV with a stack of papers. It was on a 4x8
palette.
It was a huge table of papers that he said he signed to give his children control of his businesses. My understanding is those papers were completely 100% fake.
They were blank.
And that there was no signature, no nothing to divest himself so that this wouldn't be an issue. So he lied to us from the very beginning, as I knew he would. So far, 2 of the 2,500 instances have made it into the court system, and Murray's going to bring you up to date on those 2 instances.
That were started by Democratic leadership.
200
lawmakers that have signed this complaint. And it is not even that he violated the Emoluments Clause. It's that they can't inquire the documentation to prove that he violated
and
the
that gets us
Emoluments
back
Clause.
to obstruction of justice, another Trump cornerstone.
And the best part is he's got a crack legal team. It's one thing that the Republicans are known for, is being really smart.
William Barr.
Totally sarcastic here. So, but what happens is their first argument when it was brought before the court was that it didn't apply to them. That executive privilege, or being an executive, part of the executive branch, made them exempt from the Emoluments Clause.
Exactly. And yet it was written for the executive branch, Marie.
For better, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So the judge is like, yeah, that's not how this is reading, so we're going to say no. So they appealed it, and it went to another court. And this time, it was a ridiculous argument, and I apologize, I can't remember what it was, but it was something that literally the appeals court was laughed at. So we are on for this case that's going to be here. We're on the fourth appeal that it's been. All the judges are saying, you got to give the crap they need, dude, because you're... And even in one case, the judge said, your arguments are so despicable or so bad, I would revoke your law license. Like, literally in the decision is this scathing review of the insanity and stupidity of the arguments that this administration is putting forward, which should scare all of us to no end.
It's, Trump has always lawyered up on everything. This is how he avoids paying his contractors. It's how he avoids paying his employees. It's how he avoids...
And he uses his attorneys to bully people.
Yes. He avoids paying business partners.
It's a very mob mentality.
It is a mob mentality, if anything.
It's a conciliere.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Trump and his mob boss, wannabe mob boss tactics. And the problem with when he does stuff like this is, he has always operated above the law. And in this country, if you're able to afford to lawyer up, you can afford to get away with a lot. And we saw it recently in
if you're white,
yeah,
if you're male, if you're wealthy.
Well, we saw it in the college admission scandal.
Yeah, you have a lot more ability to get away with things than you do.
You can lawyer up.
Yeah, you have the connections you have alone that you make being in those circles makes it has an impact. It inherently stacked against.
Right. So far he's made 387 visits to his properties. Most of our presidents in the past have gone to federal properties like Camp David. They might go home for, Obama used to go home to Hawaii for Thanksgiving, and people would just lose their minds over that. We can't pay for a president to go to Hawaii. Well, 387 times you and I have paid for all of his staff to stay at Mar-a-Lago or at Doral or at...
So not only is he using the publicity of his position to gain...
To benefit,
to raise his brand, he's also... enriching himself on both ends. He's not paying for it. We are.
Right.
Which is normal. That's expected, for within reason. I don't think there's a set limit, which there should be. But not only that, he's doing it for free, but he's able to make money on empty rooms with the 45 staff that come with him, including Secret Service, protection, whatever needs to be.
Right, and because they can't sell out the rooms for security reasons, we have to pay for those empty rooms. So it's really important for you to know the depth of the grift from this administration. And
then the properties become the properties were always an issue, and anyone who thought anything else was a fool. This is a man who his entire existence is based on gold lame giant Trump
toilets.
Just giant letters.
Yeah.
He needs not just to own all these properties, but he needs
to stick his name on it.
Yeah, he needs to have the grandeur of it. And that's who he has built himself as this empire. But here's what happens. When he'd go to Mar-a-Lago, back in his very early presidency, the guy who carries the nuclear football took a selfie with him, and it was shared. The security at Mar-a-Lago is so bad. I don't know if they've addressed it, but it's terrible, horrible.
And we've remarked on how bad the security was at the Trump rally we attended. I couldn't believe. I mean, they took away a lot of stuff from people, like cigarette lighters, but then other people they didn't take anything away from. And I was stunned. I was stunned at how close we were to the president and vice president, who were standing, arms locked together with the poor
and
level
there was
of security.
Such a tiny barrier between.
There was no barrier, really.
No, between the masses of people. It was just really, really weird. It was very, very surreal. But they still come, apparently, I guess. But here's the other thing is that then if he is visiting his own properties and they're not a neutral property, people have access. People who pay to join those properties then get access to him. And
we know.
So it's a way for domestic and foreign to bribe their way into his line of sight.
Coming up here in Chicago, and this is a little bit different, but you can pay tens of thousands of dollars to have a roundtable discussion with Donald Trump. If you are a white supremacist, if you are a terrorist, if you are the garbage man, if you're anybody...
Well, that's his fundraiser. You can't do anything about...
Well, if you pay the money, you get to sit down and have a roundtable discussion with our president. I don't recall that for any president previously, a private roundtable for $70,000.
And then there's a scam about that, actually. Not the one in Chicago, but there is a scam going on.
Oh, a scam in Donald Trump? Are you kidding?
His campaign is telling people that they send out a personalized invitation, and it says, Donald Trump would like you to join him for breakfast, blah, 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 blah. And you have to donate and get a chance to win.
Right. They're selling raffle tickets.
Right.
Without a license.
Yeah. So... Yeah. Well, that's just another part of the criminal. But when we talk about having access to him, unfettered access, who has been in his cabinet? Who has been his advisors? Who is his law team? Who is he listening to?
Anybody that makes a donation.
Maria Butina had access to him and his ear through Mar-a-Lago.
So why don't you tell people who she is? Because they may have forgotten who that little cookie is.
She got... I think she's dead now. She got sent back to Russia.
I don't think she's dead, but I think
he approved her transfer back.
Did he? Well, tell everybody who she is.
She is the Russian government agent who infiltrated the NRA. Didn't take much to do that.
No.
Also infiltrated high levels of the Trump administration and the Trump the Trump campaign
through sex. Apparently,
I don't have any proof on that.
No.
That
was in part of the reports is that it was a lot of sex. So, I guess you can get these old men off, and you can. Yes, you can. Here's the way to the casting couch. She apparently didn't have a Me Too movement like the rest of us did, but so here's a couple of the other things he's done. Okay, we've had. Spent $600,000 of our money for limo rides for Mike Pence recently. And guess who owned those limos? Donald Trump. So they were from his Scottish...
I had not heard about this. He owns the limo company
Right.
Now, it was a far enough stretch to have him stay at Trump property.
There were
there were so many logistical reasons why it was not a good idea.
Right. And they were hours away from
where they needed to be.
Obligations, yeah.
And yet he stayed there. I had not heard that the limos were owned by Trump Corporation.
Yes, they were. And in Dunesburg, we had there's an airport that's not doing well, and it's the closest airport to the Trump resort there. And Scotland was talking about closing this airport because nobody goes in there unless they're going to the Trump resort. guess where we're stopping to get our fuel for our Air Force now? Guess where we're stopping?
Right.
It's not on the way. Mm-hmm. And we're paying European prices for fuel, which is way more expensive than what we pay in the United States. Fuel is very expensive in Europe, but we're going there to refuel anyway, Murray. And that keeps that airport open. Yeah, petrol. And it keeps that airport open so that
people can fly in to go to his resort.
Right, exactly. So everywhere you look, there's conflict of
conflict of interest.
Right.
And all of these separate conflict of interests boil down to the fundamental discussion of the Emoluments Clause. Now, if we talk about the foreign, that's all campaign violation. That's all campaign influence.
You and I would have gone to prison had we done that. Had Murray and I done this when we were running for office, we would be in prison.
Right.
There'd be no way around it. And yet our president does this not just once by accident, not just 5 times, 2,500 times. 2,500 times.
And he knew going into it that it was, I honestly think, whoever the strings are that pulled it made him believe that he would get to use the office. How they got him to run was to use the office as his own brand.
Yeah.
And I think that he has absolutely no interest in governance. He has no interest in foreign policy. He doesn't care about how anything is done. He just doesn't like brown people.
In Turkey, where
gay people, women, smart people.
In Turkey, where he just literally sacrificed a bunch of Kurds at the altar of Vladimir Putin, he has condominiums. But he doesn't have any in Syria. So did that affect his foreign policy? We'll never know, because with him, grift is expected. It is the expected way he does business instead of caring for our country.
The whole legal argument about the first law case is to get his tax returns so we can see where those conflicts of interest are. Because of owning all these properties, because not being able to find the documentation of him turning it over. And our founding fathers never thought to make it mandatory, to make it a guarantee. We never thought you would have someone who would so blatantly bastardize the office for self-aggrandization. Now it's been happening, and Reagan was good at making money and his buddies off of his presidency. But no one in their right mind could have thought that this was where we would be.
Murray, I've been reading about some legislation that people are proposing and starting to write now called the Trump Amendment to the Constitution. And
ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it plugs all the holes in our democracy that Trump and the GOP have exploited for their own personal gain, as far as how many when judges can be appointed, the amount of hearings that needs to be held, the amount of votes that needs to be held, the length of those judgeships, the other things like the Emoluments Clause, that the president is not above the law, that the president must disclose the last 10 years of their tax returns, those sorts of things. And
to see for conflicts of interest.
Right, because we've had too many conflicts of interest.
And he's violating both the domestic and the foreign. So when one of the very first things that happened when he took office was the dignitaries that were coming to greet him from not third world countries, from
other countries,
from dictatorial countries that the United States would typically not deal with or help with. They all booked hotels, his properties.
Yes,
they all spent countless money at his properties.
If you booked at his Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., you got to see the president. There is direct connections with that. It cannot be denied, because if you booked at the Ramada Inn, you're not getting in to see him. That's just that you can follow the trail.
And all it would take, even if that wasn't the case, would be for a Saudi delegation to come and stay at his property, and then even if they didn't get to meet with him, go back, and the Saudi rep calls and says, "Oh my goodness, it was lovely at your property. We'd love to."
We just spent
You just took his
$240,000
ego through the roof, and now he is Mr. Putty in your hands.
Right.
It goes even beyond. The implications are pretty significant past just him making a buck. Oh, sure, he should be able to make a buck or whatever. No, it is affecting our foreign policy. It is causing us to go to war. It is extremely threatening situation, the Emoluments Clause violation.
The gravity of his inability to govern, his inability to lead, his inability not to do things for profit are costing our credibility in the nation or in the world. And we will spend the rest of our lives waiting to see it come back to some semblance of order.
The Saudi Arabia. So when you join the military, you promise to serve country.
Your Constitution.
Your
Uphold
Constitution.
the Constitution.
And serve your country.
Right.
Protect and serve. Donald Trump has agreed to give troops to Saudi Arabia just today, wasn't it? Or yesterday?
It was yesterday.
And he's going to send our children, our brothers, our sisters, our husbands, our wives, our aunts, are going to be put
on Saudi soil.
On Saudi soil.
Under Saudi control.
Under Saudi control without it being peace, furthering foreign relations, a domestic threat, an international threat.
And the Saudi government is going to give us money for this, for our, they're making our troops, our armed forces into mercenaries for Saudi Arabia. Now, it's bad enough that we've given them smart bomb technology, weapons that they don't need. And you have to understand, the Saudis perpetrated 9/11. We went to war with Iraq and Afghanistan over 9/11, and they didn't do it.
Nope.
Those were two sovereign nations that had nothing to do with it. But the Saudis were flying the planes and funding the terrorists.
So we're using the might of the United States
to help fight ourselves eventually.
We are using those men and women who believe in country and protecting what we believe in. We're now using them as a mercenary force for the highest bidder. If that doesn't take away any shred of credibility of who we are as a nation and what we stand for and what we won't tolerate, this action has come. I think would be the final straw if it isn't.
Every time I think we've hit a final straw, Murray.
Oh God, we just go lower.
Every time, and I've had so many gut checks since the election in 2016. I've had so many moments where I've gone, oh my God, it can't get worse.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, well, I've come to expect him to sell us out, and he sold out our allies. He's fought with every one of our allies. He's made friends with despots that we don't. We hold a hard line on Russia and Putin for a reason. I lived through the Cold War. Murray lived through the Cold War.
Absolutely.
We cannot trust them, and we cannot make excuses for Donald Trump because he may or may not be wealthy. Every time I hear one of his supporters say, "Well, he's
so successful," he's not. He's a grifter. He's not successful. If he released his tax return, it would be his ultimate fear exposed.
Right. That he's not as wealthy as we think.
When he was roasted on Comedy Central, when they did the roast of Donald Trump, everything was fair game. Comments he made about Ivanka, you name it, was all fair. The only thing he refused to allow anyone to question was his wealth.
Right.
Was his financial worth and his wealth. He's a fraud.
He is a fraud. And during that roast, I think is when infamously Obama went after him. And didn't he?
Obama wasn't in that roast.
There was something where.
No, this is before he took office, before he ran for president. They did a Comedy Central roast of Donald Trump, and that was the only thing that he would not allow them
to talk about. And here's the other thing, too, with Donald Trump, is he has his advisors, which is his daughter and his son-in-law, neither of which could pass a security clearance, especially Jared, who
had to refile his financial disclosures 42 times because
he still isn't approved.
Forgetting.
He still is not approved. Jared Kushner is not. And he has access to secrets at the highest level. And here's the problem with that. What secrets have been for sale since Donald Trump took office?
We could go on for another hour and talk about the insider trading and the connection that they're trying to
Oh my
push
God!
out.
Did you see the insider trading
Jesus,
thing?
Mary, and Joseph, but that's going to take too long.
Right.
So we just wanted to talk to you today about the Emoluments Clause.
That it is a real thing and that it is a grave concern.
Real, both domestic and foreign.
Right.
And that it's not, even if... It's crucial that the courts rule the right way on this.
It's crucial that the courts hear it.
Yeah. But if they don't rule the right way on this, we have lost democracy. It's gone.
It's gone. It's sold.
Yeah, you can't. We won't be able to come back from that.
And we, Murray, we keep talking about, what could happen next. This is one of those things that the door has to be shut and bolted because we have to be able to protect the integrity of our nation. And so far, Donald Trump has sold us every which way but Sunday.
Absolutely.
And I think Sunday, too.
So thanks for joining us for the Emoluments Clause. It's real, what it is, why it's being violated, and the undue influence that it has even beyond the direct, hey, wow, that's not good. Yeah. Oh, crap, this could happen too.
Yeah.
Which has already happened. So please like us, subscribe, join us, sponsor.
Share this podcast with everyone you know, everyone you meet, people you don't know.
I'd like to give a little plug. I was talking to a DeKalb city councilman.
Yeah.
And we were talking today, and he's a really great guy, Scott McAdams. And he said, I love your podcast. And he's like, when you went to Biden, I was so interested. How are they going to do this? How could anybody say anything good about Biden? And he's like, you guys were factual. You were, this is what happened. This is what he said and how he said it. And there wasn't an opinion in there. And I told him both of us are, right now, not Biden supporters, but he's like, you gave such a fair assessment. And I was like, oh, you got to check the one out on Tulsi. It's really good.
And one thing I wanted to clarify with Tulsi is Hillary Clinton never called her out by name.
Never.
Tulsi read that into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say
I think what she was doing is trying to capitalize on a couple of seconds of fame. Try to pull some of those Bernie folks, some of those other folks, those Clinton hater folks, and get them excited and elevated. And clickbait, for her to gain more, because Hillary has way more followers than Tulsi you ever gonna have.
Well, and the thing is that bashing Clinton really lowered Tulsi even more in my eyes. And I wasn't a big fan before. And yet we didn't really say too much about Tulsi because she's a candidate and the choice should be yours who you vote for.
And that's exactly it. We give you the information. We give you a perspective, many different perspectives. And if it is our opinion, we will clearly state, this is our opinion.
Yeah.
So you're never wondering if what we're telling you is true or not, which I was really proud and glad to hear from Scott McAdams. So thanks, Scott. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Please.
I'd like to send some thanks to our producer, Christian Henry, for clearing up all of
Thank you, Chris. Yeah. We couldn't do it without you.
Right.
And we couldn't do this without you. Please help us spread the message. Thanks again, Heartland Mamas, MAMAS.
Bye-bye.